الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the zakah, and we stopped at إخراج or مصارف الزكاة. مصارف الزكاة, the مصارف where the zakah is supposed to go to. This is مصارف الزكاة, correct? So the last thing we talked about was what's recommended, ما يسن, while a person is giving the zakah. And the words that we need to remember, at least the titles of things, like for example, إخراج الزكاة, إخراج الزكاة, and it has an effect in understanding the rulings of it. So as if you remember, az-zakah has to come out from the person. The intention when a person is giving zakah, that it's zakah. You cannot write off some money and consider that as zakah. So if you give someone a loan and then that person, it's difficult for him to pay it back, you can't say, well, let me consider that as zakah. It doesn't work that way. You have to have the intention while you're giving the money, it has to be zakah. You don't have to inform the other side that you're giving him zakah, as long as he is one of the 8 categories that we'll talk about inshallah ta'ala. And in some or many cases, it's best that you don't inform them that this is zakah, so that you don't break their hearts. You can just give them the money for whatever reason, even if it's like a gift type of thing. But it's your intention that you're giving out your zakah. So this is إخراج الزكاة. So now مصارف الزكاة. مصارف الزكاة, the plural of مصرف, which is the way of spending the zakah. He says أهل الزكاة, the people of the zakah, those who deserve the zakah, that it's permissible to give them the zakah, are ثمانية, 8 categories of people, 8 types of people, which is basically mentioned in the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, verse number 60, and we should memorize this verse, inshallah. We should memorize this verse number 60, Surah At-Tawbah, which is very easy. إنما الصدقات, indeed as-sadaqat. As-sadaqat here refers to the zakah, because the zakah is sadaqah, but it's an obligatory sadaqah. إنما الصدقات, and this is exclusive, that means only to للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. 8 types of people. فريضة من الله, فريضة من الله, obligation, فرض from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. والله عليم حكيم, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-knower, the most wise. So it is not permissible for anyone to give the zakah to other than these 8 categories. That's why the knowledge of who are these 8 types of people is fard, of course, for the person to know, or to give it to someone that he knows how to give the zakah. So, and of course, there's a great wisdom behind this. The ulama talked about even the wisdom behind that. And as we heard the hadith, it is not for anyone. It's only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He made the zakah only for these types of people. Even if everybody agrees, we have a situation where maybe if we, give the money to orphanage or to hospital or to this and that, this is a great benefit. We need to give it with your charity. It doesn't have to be the zakah. Zakah is only in these 8 categories, and that's why either a person has the knowledge of it or they have to ask the ulama, because this is only from Allah and no one has the authority to change that whatsoever. The first one, al-fuqara. إنما الصدقات للفقراء. And we'll be brief, inshallah. We won't necessarily cover all of the masail in this, because this is intended to be brief, to take the basics and to understand it, and then go then the next level, inshallah. So the first one, al-fuqara. Who are the fuqara as defined here in this context? وهم الذين لا يجدون بعض الكفاية. Those who don't find some of the kifaya, some of what is sufficient for them. Al-kifaya, meaning the bare necessities. The bare necessities. So al-fuqara, they are a level which is lower, even worse than the level of the masakin in this context. So al-fuqara, those who do not find even some of the bare necessities. Like if the bare necessities, and it can be different from one place to the other, from time to another, say, for example, the bare necessities is 100, whatever currency that is. Al-Fuqara, those who do not even have some of the 100. So say, for example, they don't even have 30 of it. And some they would mention like half, less than half even of the bare necessities. And also we have to remember, zakah, the bare necessities is what keeps the person alive. What keeps the person alive. If he doesn't receive the zakah, he's not able to live. He has to, do something else. So it's the bare necessities. And with what's mentioned before, if it's money, then it has to be given money. If it's animals, it's to be given animals, and so on. So you cannot, this will be mentioned also, but again, we want to get into so much details. You cannot give blankets as zakah. You cannot give food as zakah. It's, as mentioned before, it's like someone giving you your salary instead of money. He'll give you blankets because it's cold. You tell him, give me my money, I'll take care of it. I know what I need. If he's poor, this is his rights. It's not you're not doing a favor to the poor. You're giving the rights of the poor. As zakah is the right of the poor. This is the portion of one's wealth that it is not for the person, not for the owner of it, does not belong to him. It belongs to the poor, and therefore it's to be given to them. Unless they're insane, that's a different situation. So al-fuqara, those who do not find some of the kifaya, some of the bare necessity. Al-masakin, which is a little bit better than the fuqara, وهم الذين يجدون أكثر الكفاية أو نصفها. Those who find most of al-kifaya, what's sufficient for them, or half of it. So now we have those who have even less than half, which is al-fuqara, and the fuqara half and more, and all of that is still below the necessity. Because if they have what for their necessities, then they're not to be given from the zakah. They can be given charity, yes, but not from the zakah money. So, and the zakah is intended so that there's no poor person in the sense that he would have to go beg or ask people. He have what is sufficient for him throughout the entire year, as it's also going to be mentioned. And to be given, what's the maximum that can be given to these people? What would be suffice for them the entire year? That they won't ask people for an entire year. So this is the fuqara, then the masakin, very brief. So again, what's the fuqara? We have to know this specific differences. Al-fuqara in this ayah, and this is not at all times, because the fuqara includes the masakin and the masakin includes the fuqara. But in the categories of the zakah, al-fuqara are worse. They have only, they don't find some of the kifaya, of the what's sufficient, and the masakin, they have half or more. So they're closer to be in no need of zakah. The third one, al-amiluna alayh. Al-amiluna alayha. And I don't have the translation of the verse. Let me get the translation. If you have the translation, what is al-amiluna alayha? Those who work alayha. But how they translate al-amiluna alayha? Because alayha is significant here. Not al-amiluna fiha, al-amiluna alayha. Because that's what the Quran says. What is al-amiluna alayha in the English version? Those who appointed by to administer, those employed to administer the funds. But it's not quite perfect or accurate, because al-amiluna alayha, yes, وهم جباتها, they are the ones that appointed by who? By wali al-amr, by the person of authority, by the ruler. So this is, as we heard before, that the zakah, it's the job of the person of authority, the hakim, the ruler. This is not the individual ones. So he would hire those who would go to the people and collect their zakah. The salary of these people is from the zakah money. Their salary is from the zakah money. Right? So these are the ones that collected, they keep the records of it. Anyone that is working, distributing it, but appointed by the person of authority. And he says, إِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ رَاتِبٌ, if they don't have a ratib or a wage or a salary. Can that apply to the charity organizations? The answer is no. Charity organizations, if they're collecting zakah money, they cannot give from the zakah money as salaries to those who collect the zakah and those who distribute the zakah and so on. Okay, unless these individuals are poor, so they go into the category of fuqara or masakin, but not from the amilina alayha. And that's what al-amilina alayha means. They have been appointed by someone that has authority, not an independent organization. They get together, let's collect zakah and give it to the people. They are basically wakil. The agencies, they are wakil. Wakil meaning they're acting on people's behalf. They're not appointed by someone of authority. They just act on people's behalf. So if someone is acting, from your behalf, that means they are exactly like you in the ruling. So can you take from your own zakah money? No. So unless again he's ignoring the fact that they're collecting and distributing, just looking at the fact that that's a poor person. So then the poor person can be given zakah. So remember, al-amilun alayha, those who are appointed, but appointed by the ruler or wali al-amr. Number 4, al-mu'allafa qulubuhum. As it's mentioned in the ayah, al-mu'allafa qulubuhum. Qulubuhum is their hearts. Al-mu'allafa, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم. O Prophet of Allah, if you spend all of the wealth on the face of earth, you would not bring their hearts together. And that's also the word when someone compile a book, they call allaf al-kitab or ta'lif so and so. I mean, he's the one that compiled it together. So al-mu'allafa qulubuhum, those who their hearts are inclined or to soften their hearts. But what does that mean? It has a specific definition according to the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, because many people, they think al-mu'allafa qulubuhum, someone to soften their hearts to make him a Muslim, for example. No, it's not like this. Al-mu'allafatu qulubuhum wa hum ru'asa'u qawmihim. They are the head of states of their people, tribes, nations, whatever there is. Mimman yurja Islam. You hope for them to be Muslims. So you want them to listen to the truth. And you cannot bribe someone to be a Muslim. Right? It's not bribing them to be Muslims. Al-Iman is in the heart. But it's someone that they would give, for example, the ruler, he would give a gift, right, to another ruler from the zakah money, because maybe he's going to be invited to the deen of Islam. And if that person becomes a Muslim, there's a nation behind them that you hope for them to be also easy for them to be Muslims. So this is one part of it. أو كف شر, or a ruler or a tribe leader, whatever, and he is harmful to the believers. So to push away his harm, to give him some money from the zakah. So it's the benefit of the ummah, the benefits of the believers, so that they push away that harm. If this is the way for them to push the harm from the zakah money. أو يرجى بعطيته. This is the second thing. The third one, أو يرجى بعطيته قوة إيمانه أو إسلام نظيره. Or hoping by giving him that would strengthen his iman. Or the like of him will become Muslims. So he's weak in Islam, still early in the deen, things like this. So it's based on the thing that brings these three categories together, is the benefit that would happen to the ummah as a result of that. So it's not an individual person that wants to be a Muslim, so you give him from the zakah. No. You give him da'wah, if he become a Muslim and he's poor, you give him from the zakah. The zakah, it is not permissible to be given to a non-Muslim, period. You can give him charity. Charity can be given to disbelievers, no problem. You can give charity to cats and dogs. I mean, anything that has kabid rataba, as the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَفِي كُلِّ كَبِدٍ رَطْبَ صَدَقَةٍ. In anything that has a liver, there is sadaqah, there is charity. So anything that is alive, there is a charity to be given to them. But zakah, again, zakah, some people, when you say zakah, that means we cannot give sadaqah. There is the sadaqah. There is the optional sadaqah. The obligatory zakah, it's separate. It's something very specific to 8 types of people. So is it clear with the mu'allafa qulubuhum, which means the leaders of their people, those that you hope for their Islam, or to push away their harm, or hoping for their strengthening of their iman, to strengthen their iman. So this is al-mu'allafa qulubuhum, those with their hearts, you want to gain their hearts or win their hearts. Number 5, وفي الرقاب. الرقاب is the plural of رقبة, which is neck, which is a word that is used for the slaves, to describe the slaves. So these are the الرقاء المكاتبون الذين اشتروا أنفسهم من أسيادهم. Someone in slavery, he wants to free himself. A slave, and this is 1400 years ago. Imagine that this is not a charitable thing only. This is part of the zakah, which is an obligatory charity that all Muslims, those who are, they have enough wealth, they would give. So what that means is a slave that he mukatab, and mukatab is the one that made a deal with his sayyid or with his owner that he would free himself if he gave him a certain amount of money. And the owner cannot refuse. He cannot say no. He has to agree if the slave wants to free himself. So if he says, okay, to free you, this is how much I want, the zakah can be given to him so that he's free. So that means who would want to stay, whoever doesn't want to stay in slavery, he's not forced to stay in slavery. They can free themselves. And they are to be given from the zakah money. So this is وفي الرقاب. Number 6, al-gharimun. Al-gharimun, which is the plural of al-gharim. Al-gharim is someone that is imposed upon himself penalty. There's a money penalty upon him, which is, this is basically literally what it means, which is basically those who are in debt. They're supposed to, but to give money, but not any debt. He says here, وهم نوعان, 2 types of al-gharimun. The first one, غارمون لإصلاح ذات البين. This is one of the categories that will be explained later, which is many people, they don't know this one, and it's one of the mahasin and the beauty of the deen of Islam. Al-gharimun, to bring peace among people. Say, for example, there's a dispute between 2 people, and someone is coming there to bring peace. 2 people, 2 tribes, whatever there is, right? 2 factions. And it's a dispute over money, or the solution to this, if someone would give money to some, because the other one doesn't have, they took money from these people, but they don't have money to pay them back, and they bring someone to arbitrary with, among them. So that arbitrary one that comes and trying to fix the deal, he would say, okay, I'll give this one side, I'll give you $1 million. Is it everything is fine? You'll be okay? Meaning, but of course in a nice way, not that he's giving him more than what it deserves. This would dissolve the issue. That person, even if he's rich, he can get from the zakah money. And what's even more clear than this is when it comes to the diya, for example, the blood money. Someone would say, okay, I'll give it. And he's going to give it from his own self. The people that are giving zakah, they should give him from their zakah to pay the blood money that he made it upon himself. So if a person finds himself in a situation where, and he doesn't have the money, but if he finds himself in a situation where money will solve a huge problem, then he can go forward and solve it, and then people can give him from the zakah. And he's not being needy or begging or anything. This is part of what al-gharimin means, to eliminate issues and disputes among people. But that needs, of course, details. It's not like too silly, trouble that people have between one another, and then, okay, let's give them some money. It's not like this. Disputes over, money, that someone died, for example, some disaster is happening, things of that nature. So this is one category, and the person doesn't have to be poor. He doesn't have to be poor because he incurred upon himself what he didn't have to. He did that out of the goodness to bring peace or to bring goodness to the people. Okay, so this one point. The second type, غارم لنفسه. So the first one, he was gharim for others. He took money for others. So that is to be given zakah. The second one, he is incurred the debt upon himself because of his own self. That means he took a loan and he's not able to pay it back. Then he is to be given zakah. And of course, if he's able to pay, like if the time for paying the debt is not there yet, then he's not to be given from the zakah. If it's payments and he's able to pay, he cannot pay all of it at once, but he's paying on a monthly basis, for example, then he's not to be given zakah. And if it's riba, and they're not able to pay back and the time comes, then they can only be given from the zakah the money that is not the riba or the interest, only the original sum of money that they took, but not the riba, of course, because the riba is haram. But this is in the case when the person is not able to pay and the time comes and he's going to be in trouble if he does not pay the debt. That can be given from the zakah.
With regards to the first category, the person who incurs the debt on himself to reconcile, you said the person does not have to afford.
Yes.
Does that mean that? I just wanted more description into the.
Right. Say the first type, he doesn't have to be poor. Like say, for example, someone that has money. He's not a poor person. He's not receiving zakah. He's actually giving zakah every year. And there was a situation to reconcile between two people, and he would say, okay, to bring this peace, 500,000 needs to be in place. Okay, I take that upon myself. I will give you the 500,000. And he doesn't have it. Then he is to be given zakah. Even if he has it, he still can be given from the zakah because he did it to others, not for himself. And of course, this is clearly a benefiting situation, very clear and in the open. It's not something that is of any evil or anything like that.
The time of the person that makes that commitment, you should have the intention of it's going to be zakah.
No, because he's not going to give the zakah from himself. He doesn't have to have the intention that he's doing that and is going to be paid from zakah. He's doing it because he's not the one that is going to give. Someone else will give him from the zakah. So even for example, if the government is applying zakah, they would give him the zakah. And he does not have to consult them first even. They find that this is truly what happened, then he is to be given from the zakah. Or nowadays also can be clearly applied. Number 7, fi sabilillah. And fi sabilillah means al-jihad fi sabilillah. This is what it means. Not fi sabilillah, because everything is fi sabilillah. You come to the masjid fi sabilillah, you give zakah for the fi sabilillah, but fi sabilillah here, these categories of the zakah, وهم الغزاة. They are the fighters, those are in the fighting for the sake of Allah, al-mutatawwi'un, those who have no salary from their government. For example, the government would not give them salaries. Those who الذين يجاهدون في سبيل الله والدعوة إلى الله. He mentioned here the da'wah. So this is in the proper way of jihad. Of course, like the armies in the Muslim countries, for example, used to be in the past, they don't have salaries from the authorities. Everyone comes from their own. So to be given from the zakah money so that they will have whatever they need and also for their families behind. But then what's mentioned here, وَالدَّعْوَةُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Also the da'wah to Allah. And this is the fatwa of the ulama, based on the fact that the da'wah does the same as al-jihad fi sabilillah. But the da'wah to the non-Muslims, because that's what the objective of al-jihad fi sabilillah. So, but purely for the da'wah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to other than the Muslims. If it's money that is used for that, can be given from the zakah. وَمَا يُعِينُ عَلَيْهَا وَيَدْعَمُ أَعْمَالَهَا, and what helps in the da'wah and establish it and so on. But again, not da'wah work for Muslims and things like this. No, something that is clearly directly to non-Muslims, to like books, for example, that they would read to help them to become Muslims, materials, or people that are sent to places where they can call people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning talking to non-Muslims and things like this. They can be given from the zakah if it's needed. This is fi sabilillah. The last one, Ibn al-Sabil. Ibn is son, al-Sabil is the path. So he's basically the wayfarer, the one that is traveling. وهو المسافر, a traveler, المنقطع به. He does not have a way to return back home. وليس معه ما يوصله إلى بلده. He does not have a way to return back home. He does not have a transportation. He does not have money. Nowadays, for example, if someone is traveling, doesn't have money, if people can send him money from his money, wire it, for example, to him, even, things like that, of course, he doesn't, is not to be given zakah. But if there's a situation where he has no means whatsoever, is to be given from the zakah what is sufficient for him to return to his home. This is Ibn Sabil. That's the end of the zakah, by mentioning the masarif. And as mentioned, is to be given to them accordingly. So if it's al-gharim, if it's someone that has a debt, is to be only given the debt, or it can be given to the owner of the money. But al-fuqara wal-masakin, how much that can be given to them is what's sufficient for them for an entire year. So, and that can be estimated, it doesn't have to be very accurate. So, for example, if you say that faqir, if he gets $100 a month, he is sufficed for. He doesn't need anything. So, how much I can give him? If your zakah is only 100, then give him the 100. But if your zakah is $100,000, for example, right? So, how much you can give that particular person? If he only needs 100 a month, the maximum that you can give him is 100 times 12, which is 1,200 only. And you can estimate that to that one particular person. Zakah. You can give him more if you want with sadaqah. And there's all kinds of questions when people ask, for example, someone is getting married, so can we get them the furniture and things like this for what's necessary for them to get married? Zakah is the bare minimum, as we heard. So you cannot get them the things that they can live without. So if dishwasher, fridge, even though it's a necessity nowadays, right? But it's not to be given from the zakah. Give from charity and do so, and soften their hearts. And it's not like do not give them, but when it comes to the zakah, only what's necessary: a ceiling, something that they can live in, a pot, something that is the bare minimum necessity, only to be given from the zakah and not beyond that. Yes, non-Muslims are not to be given zakah except in the case of al-mu'allafa qulubuhum, but not anyone. The one that benefit will happen to the ummah, someone of status, or someone that his harm will be, even he stays as a non-Muslim, but his harm will be pushed away, that can be given from the zakah. So zakatul fitr, if you guys don't mind, or should we stop? It's okay, right? 15 minutes or so, inshallah. Zakatul fitr, it's always mentioned in the chapter of the zakah. As usual, hikmatuha, and it's al-fitr, and will be defined as, which is the one that is at the end of Ramadan for the Eid. The wisdom behind it, أنها تطهر نفس الصائم مما يكون قد علق به. It purifies the fasting person in Ramadan from what the athar, or what's been attached to him from al-lagh wal rafath, to purify his fasting. Fasting was contaminated with some bad words that a person said, or some form of things that between a person and his wife, and not that it breaks the fast or anything, things of that nature. So to purify himself from any weakness or any deficiencies less than perfect of being in state of fasting, this is the wisdom behind zakatul fitr. Zakah is purification anyway. It purifies your wealth. When you give the zakah, and the zakatul fitr is purifying oneself, meaning the patient ones. And the second thing, as he mentioned, it gives the poor and the masakin what is sufficient for them on the day of Eid, so that they don't ask people in the day of Eid, and they're enjoying whatever is given to them. So they're not, everybody becomes happy in the day of Eid. So this is one of the purpose of it. And other benefits, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Zakatul fitr, like the previous zakah, it also has to be following the deen. It's not up to the people to decide what is best and what is not. So zakatul fitr is to be given food. And this is by the clear statement of the Prophet ﷺ, and as it will be mentioned, and it's not to be given money, even though some had said that it's permissible to be given money. But there was money at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. You could have said money. And the people know money and they like money more than anything else. They can buy food and they can buy something else. But the Prophet ﷺ specifically mentioned food, and there is a wisdom behind it. We don't even know how, we don't have to know the wisdom behind it. But you're fasting the entire month of Ramadan, abstaining from food and drinks throughout the day. So this is part of what the purification is, that you're given food, it's for your own self before it reaches the poor person. So what is the amount of the zakat to be given and the types of food? مقدار زكاة الفطر صاع, by the statement of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, صاع, and the صاع is أربعة أمداد, is 4 أمداد, and the mud is 1-2 handfuls of a normal person. 4 of that is comprises the sa', and we talked about the sa' before, which is a volume measure, and it's to the most part is very accurate from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He says he gives the taqdeer of it, what's approximately the sa' is nowadays wazn wise or weight wise, when we talked about that also before, is he gives actually more than what it's the estimate of it to be on the safe side, 3 kilograms, which is less than that. It's kind of 2.5, 2.4, but 3 to be on the safe side. So it's 3 kilograms. وتخرج, what type of food? من غالب قوت أهل البلد, from what the norm of the qut. The qut is the type of the raw food that is the norm of the food of the people that they eat in a town. So, for example, everybody eats rice, or everybody eats flour. They have flour. Of course, there is the dates, whether it's barley or wheat or tamr or rice, zabib. These types of things. So it can be different. For example, if people, you give them dates, what dates? They don't want to eat dates. So you give what they are, they are at ease with it. It's the norm of their in their environment. But something that is for example, it has to be something that can be saved, not canned food and things of that nature. It has to be something that they can cook. And in each situation, sometimes, for example, flour is okay. Some said it's okay for the pastas, for example, even though this is a new thing. Some they said it's permissible because it's the same thing, can be saved, and the people that use it, so that's fine. So it has to be food, and mention again غالب. Get this point now first. غالب قوت أهل البلد, the norm or what most people would eat in the town that the person is in. وقت وجوبها ووقت إخراجها, the time for it becomes mandatory and the time when to give it. تجب زكاة الفطر بحلول ليلة العيد. When is it mandatory? By the night of the Eid. After the people see the Hilal and the next day is Eid, this is the night of the Eid, then it's mandatory. It becomes mandatory then upon the people to give. But this is different than وأوقات إخراجها, when it's permissible to give it out. He says وقت جواز, there is وقت جواز, permissible time, and there is mandatory time. The permissible time is before the day of Eid by 1 day or 2 days, as Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu used to do that. So to get ready, you can give it a day or 2 before Eid. No problem, it's permissible. But when it becomes obligatory, at the night of the Eid. And the perfect time to give it, if a person is able to do that, to make it reach the poor, is from the Fajr of the day of Eid. That's the best time to make it reach the poor, after Fajr of the day of Eid, right before the Salah. So the cut-off time, the end time, is the Salah time. Once the Salah is made, Zakat al-Fitr is not valid anymore. It's Sadaqah. That's why those who come for Salatul Eid and they give the Zakat al-Fitr right there by Salatul Eid, and then the people make Salah, it did not reach the poor before Salatul Eid. So it does not count as Zakat al-Fitr, it's Sadaqah, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So it has to reach the poor before the Salah time. And there is an ease in Madhab Ahmad where as long as it reaches the poor during the day, But again, to be on the safe side, it's before the Saleh. So you see the different times here. There's a permissible time, which is a day or two before Eid. That is becomes obligatory once the night of Eid starts, and it's all the way till the Salah. And the best time from the time that it becomes obligatory till Salatul Eid, the best time is after Fajr and before Salatul Eid. That's the best if it reaches the poor. Because again, the Prophet ﷺ ordered for Zakatul Fitr to be given before people going out for the Salah. Okay? من تجب عليه زكاة الفطر? Who zakatul fitr is obligatory upon? Different than zakatul mal. Zakatul mal with very specific calculations for each type of wealth. Zakatul mal, the previous one, is upon the wealth, is to be taken out of the wealth. Zakatul fitr is about the individual, not the wealth. So it's basically zakatul abdan. It's upon the body of the individual, that's why the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that it's tajib ala kulli Muslim. It's mandatory upon every Muslim, hur, free, أو عبد, or even a slave, ذكر أو أنثى, male or female, صغير أو كبير, young or old. فضل عن قوت يومه وليلته. That means he has extra food of even the necessity, extra than the necessity of a day. That means if he have the food of 2 days, he has at his home, not just at his home, he has enough money, all of what he has in his life is food for 2 days. Then he has to give zakatul fitr. Anything that is more than 1 day, that means even the poor will give zakatul fitr. Even the poor, if they have more than what their food of the day, they will give zakatul fitr. ويستحب إخراجه عن الجنين في بطن أمه. It's recommended to give it also for the child in the womb of his mother, the fetus. If it's 4 months or older, you count them. Because the one that would give the zakah is the head of the household. So, for example, the man, he has a wife and 2 children, and his wife is pregnant. So he would give zakatul fitr for himself and for his wife and the 2 children, that's 4, and she's pregnant, so 5, on 5 people. Each one is the sa', the 3 kilograms of rice, for example. So 3 times 5 is, for example, 15 kilograms of rice. And 1 kilogram is like 2.5 pounds. So you can give it money to someone that would purchase the food and they can distribute it to the poor, no problem. Someone would act on your behalf. But it has to reach the poor food. Masrif Zakat al-Fitr is like the masrif, or the where to be distributed, like the general zakawat. Except that the fuqara and the masakin, they are more to be given from Zakat al-Fitr than the rest of what's mentioned in the 8 categories. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أغنوهم عن السؤال في هذا اليوم. Make them rich on the day of Eid. That they don't ask people on that day. And of course, it should be given in the locality that the person is in, so that there's no poor in the locality that would be in need. And if there's none, then it can be given to further areas, or far away if people are more in need. This is briefly the end of what's mentioned in Zakatul Fitr. We can only stick to these masail only. And then after that is we have fasting. Before with the other questions, and I don't want to keep you long, that we need to take the hadith. It's okay. Hadith 116. Hadith 116. Everybody's there? Hadith 116. Okay, we'll start. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خير صفوف الرجال أولها خير صفوف الرجال أولها وشرها آخرها وخير صفوف النساء آخرها وشرها أولها. رواه مسلم. The hadith is very easy, but it can be confusing when you're memorizing. But if you know what أولها means and آخرها means. أولها means أول, the first. آخرها, the last. So know أولها first, آخرها last. And خير, we know what خير means, good. And شر means bad or evil. So خير صفوف الرجال. صفوف, صف, and صف, and صف is called صفوف. So the rows of men. خير صفوف الرجال, and this is in Salah. خير, the best rows of men, أولها, the first of it. The first of the rows of men are the best. وشرها آخرها, and the worst is the last صفوف. شرها here does not mean evil, that means people committing sins upon evil. No, but when you say خيرها, the opposite of that is شرها. So it's in correspondence of the خير. So it's the least. It's least. It's less in rewards, right? Not that it's evil, meaning sinful. So basically you can say that the best صفوف, the best rows of men, أولها, أولها, the first, and the least of it, وشرها آخرها, the last rows. وخير صفوف النساء, and the best of the rows of women, آخرها, the opposite. So if you memorize what's best for the صفوف of الرجال, أولها وشرها آخرها. And وخير صفوف النساء, and the best rows for women, آخرها, the last of the rows. وشرها أولها, and the worst of it is the first. So assuming, which is the normal thing, is that the men pray behind the imam and then the women pray behind the men, even if there's a wall, right? So whether there's a wall or there's no wall, the women, they pray behind the imam. They don't pray next to the imam. And this is in Salah. So also in gatherings and lectures, this bid'ah thing where they sit next to each other, it used to be behind and then the front of the men, right? There used to be something, but now they removed that something, and then they became behind and front, and then, oh no, that doesn't look good. So they bring the women next to the men, but the men are together and the women together, and then what happens afterwards? They're all mixed together. And you can even see sometimes women in the front and the men in the back, and I'm not sure where it's gonna go. And then the women, they become facing the people, like giving the lectures, and the men are sitting and the women are sitting, and women giving lectures, and this is masajid or dealing with deen. This is, and you can imagine how the hadith of the sufuf in the salah. So again, so khayru sufuf rijal, this is in salah, the best rows for men are the first, and that's why this is the best. And awaluha is the first saf. This is the best of the rewards, of course. And the hadith, لو يعلم الناس ما في الصف الأول والأذان لاستهموا عليه. That if they know the reward, they would draw lots who would stand in the first row. And the one that deserves the first rows are the ones that come early and they stay there, not the ones that push people or do something that is harmful to them or to save a spot. And the least in rewards is the last. And the best rows for women. So the women, when they come early, they sit in the back first. If they come to Salatul Jama'ah, if they want the best of the rewards, they sit in the furthest. Why akhiruha is the best? Because that's the farthest row from the men. As the more she's far from men, the more she gets rewards. Because if they're praying in the same place, the last row is far away from men. And the first one is the closest to the men. So that's the least in rewards, the one that is closer. And if they pray in the same place without a barrier in between, as always, this is brought up that at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was no curtains. Yes, there wasn't. But they would never mix. And the Prophet ﷺ, clearly in the hadith of Anas radiallahu anhu, that we heard this many times before, that when the Prophet ﷺ would give salam, he would stay facing the Qibla for a little while. And Anas radiallahu anhu, he said, why is that? So that the women leave. And then the Prophet ﷺ turned to the people so that when he turned, his eyes does not fall onto the women, those who are in the back. So the women, when they finish the salah, they leave right away. No tasbih, no nothing. If they come to the salah, and they should not prevent it from coming to the salah. And the men, they would stay, of course, facing the qibla till the women leave, and then they would leave. And there was a door for women and door for men at the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's mentioned in the narration that Ibn Umar would never enter from the door of the women, meaning even if the masjid is empty, because the Prophet ﷺ made a specific door for women. And many evidences that shows how they were separated in the masajid, in the houses of Allah. And you see how when people start, how the shaitan, it steps after step, and then they go out in the lobby and they mix together, and it's all in the masajid. And this is all haram. It's not permissible. Sins are committed in the masajid. How the sins are committed? By not lowering the gaze. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to lower the gaze. So when you have mixing that in the masajid, that you say they're in the streets. Yes, in the street, lower your gaze. But in the masjid, to have mixed gatherings, that means your people are looking at one another, and this is haram, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid that. And people need to be patient with the deen of Allah and not to change matters of the deen of Islam out of whatever good intentions, bad intentions. There's no such a thing as good intentions in such an evil act. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the evil within our own selves and guide us all to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Is it clear? Someone might say, well, if the place of the women sometimes in some of the masajid is onto the side. If they are designing a masjid, they shouldn't. But if that is what's happening and it's in a different room, but it's to the side of where the men is, then still is to apply this hadith. The last row, it comes first, and it's more rewardable than the first row for women. So it's easy now to memorize, right? أولها آخرها. طيب إن شاء الله.